Don't make a fuss. It's not your day. That's what my mother hissed as she nudged me away from the front table, the one dressed in gold linens, crystal flutes, and laughter. Instead, she pointed me toward the corner, a folding chair next to a stack of poorly wrapped gifts and a half-deflated balloon bouquet. Just be grateful we even invited you, she added under her breath. And that was the moment something inside me, something I'd been holding onto for years, snapped. My name is Alyssa Monroe, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever felt like a ghost at your own family celebration? Like your presence is tolerated, but never truly seen? Because that night, I disappeared in plain sight. I had flown in straight from New York, where I'd spent 3 back-to-back weeks working 16-hour days on an international arbitration case, one that had just closed a $7.2 million deal. I hadn't even unpacked yet. And yet, here I was, dismissed like the coat check girl at my younger sister's engagement party. It wasn't even the chair placement. It was the message. The bride's father, Mr. Curtis, a real estate mogul who once said I looked too plain to be a lawyer, chuckled as he passed by me. Gift tables where the help sits, huh? My own father laughed. Laughed. No one corrected him. Not my mom. Not my sister. Not even the fiancé, who once cried in my kitchen asking for resume help. They called it an intimate upscale dinner. I called it a calculated public humiliation. Crystal chandeliers. Seafood towers. Personalized menus. But no seat for the girl who once paid the mortgage when Dad's business went belly up for a year. I sat in silence. Tight smile. Straight spine. Until my phone vibrated. It was a notification from my assistant, Tasha. Client. Curtis Developments. Status. Final sign-off pending. Awaiting your authorization. I stared at the message. Blinked. Read it again. Oh, how deliciously poetic the universe can be. You see, the $7.2 million contract Mr. Curtis was celebrating with champagne and caviar, it ran through my firm. Through me. I was the senior counsel on that deal. I had the power to approve, or to decline. And in that moment, as my sister toasted her amazing future and my mother beamed like she'd just birthed royalty, I quietly stepped outside, opened the portal, typed 7 words. Decline. Pending conflict of interest. Terminate immediately. Clicked send. Then turn off my phone. 10 minutes later, just as the main course was being served, Mr. Curtis's phone rang. His face turned pale, then red, then a sort of terrifying, mottled white. He stood up so fast his chair toppled over. You can't be serious. She doesn't have that authority. She's just. Then his eyes found mine. The gift table girl. The one with a law degree, a quiet smile, and his future in her palm. You, he said, stunned. I simply reached for my wine, raised it slightly. Cheers. And took a sip. The room fell dead silent. You could hear the knives hit the plates. But it was too late. The gift table girl had just gifted them the bill. For a full 30 seconds. No one said a word. Forks hovered midair. Champagne froze in flutes. My sister's jaw slackened. The smile still painted on but draining fast, like someone forgot to tell her the joke was over. And Mr. Curtis? He looked like a man who just watched his empire spring a leak, then explode. This has to be a mistake, he muttered, clutching his phone like it could reverse time. He stormed out of the ballroom, barking into the line, his voice fading down the hall. That's when my mother leaned across the table. Alyssa, what did you do? No gratitude. No curiosity. Just accusation. I'm sorry, I said, my tone like honey soaked in iron. I didn't realize sitting next to wrapping paper disqualified me from basic human decency. Dad stood up then, face flushed. You embarrassed this family. I stood too. No, you embarrassed me. Repeatedly. Publicly. Systematically. I just finally returned the favor. The silence didn't hold. Not for long. Whispers erupted like firecrackers. Is she really the lawyer on that deal? That's the firm handling Curtis Developments? Didn't she go Ivy League or something? Funny how quick people remember when the consequences start paying visits. I stepped out into the garden, the air cool and sharp, exactly what I needed. My heels clicked over stone like punctuation marks. Then I heard her voice. Alyssa. My sister. She followed me out, dress clinging to her like silk arrogance. You couldn't just let me have this day? I turned slowly. Oh, you mean the day where I flew across the country to be humiliated at your altar of self-importance? You always think you're better than everyone. I laughed. No, I just stopped believing I was less. There's a difference. She folded her arms. So, this is revenge? No. This is a reminder. Of what? I walked up to her. Close. Close enough that she couldn't avoid the reflection in my eyes. That the woman you tried to sit next to the gift table was the gift. Back in the ballroom, the mood had soured. Mr. Curtis hadn't returned. Dad had stopped smiling. Even the caterer looked tense. And that's when something truly cinematic happened. One of the major investors on the Curtis project, Mr. Leong, a quiet man from Singapore who hadn't spoken a word all evening, stood up, walked over to my table, held out his hand. Miss Monroe, I've followed your career. You're brilliant. Everyone turned to look. If you ever open your own firm, I'd like to be your first client. I took his hand, smiled. Funny. I've been considering it. The fallout came fast. Mr. Curtis's deal fell apart by Monday. A leak in the press revealed financial inconsistencies he'd been hiding. My firm cut ties. His stock price dropped overnight. As for my parents, they called, texted, left voice notes about how families should stick together and how I overreacted. I didn't reply, but I did take one action. I sent my parents a check. $7,200. Exactly 0.1% of the deal they helped ruin. Memo line. For the chair. Hope it was worth it. Because sometimes revenge isn't rage. It's a smile, a sip of wine, and a reminder that they built a throne of disrespect and sat me beside it. Now I build empires, and they're not on the guest list. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Mom. I let it ring out. Then again, 10 minutes later. Dad. Straight to voicemail. By the 5th attempt from my sister this time, I turned my phone off. They weren't calling out of remorse. They were calling because the world around them was starting to crack, and I was the only one who had ever kept their house from sinking. But I wasn't going back to patch up the leaks again. At the office, things had shifted. My name was being whispered down corridors by people who once brushed past me like I was part of the wallpaper. 2 partners pulled me into a meeting that Friday. Alyssa, one said, clearing his throat. There's talk of restructuring the senior team. We'd like to nominate you to lead a new division. Not because they suddenly respected me, but because power doesn't go unnoticed once it's exposed. I appreciate it, I said. But I've made my decision. They both blinked. You're leaving? One asked. I nodded slowly. Yes. I've been building something quietly for years. And now, I'm taking it public. That night, I launched the press release. Monroe Law, a firm founded by women, led by fire, built by truth. I had 12 clients lined up in the first hour. By dawn, I had 50. By the end of the week, over 100, including Mr. Liang's entire investment portfolio. My sister, meanwhile, posted a carefully filtered photo of her post-engagement getaway. But I knew the truth. Mr. Curtis's business was under investigation. Her fiancé's family had cut off funding, and the wedding planner had quit mid-contract. Because money doesn't move without respect, and I had taken that respect with me when I walked out of that ballroom. Then came the article. Who is Alyssa Monroe? The lawyer who crushed a multi-million deal with one swipe. My inbox exploded. So did my parents' phones. I know this because I got a text from my mother for the first time in weeks. It read, "We're proud of you. Let's talk." I read it. Let it sit there. Didn't respond. A few hours later, she sent another. "We made a mistake. Please come home." Funny. That word, home. Was it the place where they sat me by garbage and wrapping paper? Where my worth was measured by car keys and social status? No. That wasn't home. That was just the place I outgrew. I poured myself a glass of wine and looked out my window, from the 28th floor of my new office. Glass walls, sunlight streaming in, my firm's name on the entrance downstairs. And I thought about that night. The folding chair, the fake smiles, the toast I was excluded from, and how none of it mattered now. Because I had built something no one could seat me out of again. And just when I thought it couldn't get more poetic, an invitation arrived. My sister's wedding, rescheduled, downsized, and now family only. I flipped it over. Not even my name. Just +1 optional. Seating near extended relatives. No table number. No title. Just a repeat of their same tired message. You don't belong with the important people. But this time they were absolutely right. I didn't belong with them anymore. I belonged above. I could have ignored the invitation. I could have tossed it in the shredder and gone back to my espresso and client contracts. But I didn't. Because some messages deserve answers. So I wrote one. RSVP. Declined. Reason. I'll be busy that day launching my foundation. No signature. No flourish. Just a quiet, surgical strike. I mailed it back in their pre-stamped envelope because if they expected me to pay for postage, they didn't know me at all. The Monroe Foundation was something I dreamt of for years. Free legal resources for women who'd been erased in silence. Financial literacy programs. Court advocacy. Pro bono housing law. And on the date of my sister's rescheduled wedding, I hosted a launch gala. Same time. Different universe. That evening, the ballroom glowed in copper and navy. Strings played overhead. My firm's clients mingled with community organizers and former shelter residents. No one cared what bag you carried or how much your shoes cost. Because here, your value wasn't measured by table number. It was measured by what you'd survived and what you were helping to build. I gave a short speech. For years, I sat at the other table. The folding chairs. The almost and not quite. But tonight, I sit here not because I was invited, but because I built the table. And now, it's open to every woman they tried to silence. The crowd stood. People cried. And somewhere, miles away in a garden with rented decor and wilting roses, my sister was walking down an aisle that had cost a relationship worth far more. Later that night, I received a photo. It came from a mutual friend who had been forced to attend both events. Bless her. It showed my sister, stiff in her designer dress, her smile cracked at the edges. And behind her, Mr. Curtis, red-faced, yelling on the phone. Apparently, another contract had just slipped through his hands, one tied to a property deal funded by my foundation. Oops. I don't gloat, but I do document. I printed that photo, not for mockery, but as proof that even if they leave you in the shadows long enough, eventually, you become the storm that rewrites their sky. A week later, my father called again, left a voicemail. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was tired. I was wrong, Alyssa. We were all wrong. You did everything for us. And we treated you like furniture. You're not enough. You were always too much for us to see clearly. I saved the message. Didn't reply. Some apologies aren't meant to be answered. They're meant to be archived. Then one night, after locking up the office late, I found a letter slid under my door. My assistant had missed it. Handwritten. From a girl named Marcy. 16. I saw your story online. I thought I was nothing until I watched your speech. I want to be a lawyer now. Thank you for showing girls like me that we can. I sat there in the dark, holding that note like a prayer. The world had tried to tuck me away next to the gift table. Now girls were putting me on their vision boards. That's when it really hit me. I didn't need a seat at their table. I was already feeding a feast to 1,000 others. 2 months after the wedding, I received an invitation, not to another family event, but to the State Economic Advancement Summit in D.C. The panel? Women Redefining Power. Keynote speaker? Me. I had to reread the email 3 times. It wasn't just a spotlight, it was vindication. And I knew exactly what to do with it. I called my assistant, smiled, and said, "We're booking a table. A big one." By the time I landed in D.C., the media buzz had already started. Not just about my foundation or the panel. But the Monroe Law Group's acquisition of a high-profile, multi-state case previously owned by, wait for it, Curtis Developments. That's right. One of Mr. Curtis's competitors had reached out quietly. They wanted a clean, brilliant firm to handle the biggest urban redevelopment in the tri-state area. And they wanted me. Your ethics, your voice, your impact. It's what this project needs, the executive had told me. I signed the contract the night before the summit. $31.8 million in billables over 3 years. And here's the kicker. At the summit, after my speech, which, by the way, ended in a standing ovation, I was approached by a man in a navy suit and an all-too-familiar smirk. Mr. Curtis. Red-eyed. Thinner. Alyssa, he said with a faux smile. I think we may have gotten off on the wrong foot. I sipped my lemon water. Waited. If you ever want to circle back, let bygones be bygones, my door's open. You know how deals work. I looked at him like someone reviewing expired milk. Mr. Curtis, your door was never open. It was bolted shut. The only reason you're talking to me now is because I built my own house. He blinked. I smiled. And I don't negotiate with people who think respect is optional. I walked away, not because it was dramatic, but because it was final. That same night, I posted a photo from the summit. Me, standing with 5 other powerhouse women, laughing, alive. Caption. They try to seat me next to the gifts. Now, I am the gift. It went viral. 300,000 likes. Thousands of comments from women who'd been dismissed, sidelined, erased. I wasn't just a headline anymore. I was a mirror for every woman who'd ever been made to feel small. Then came the letter from my sister. Handwritten, thick, expensive stationery. No doubt from some influencer box. It started with Dear Alyssa and ended with I miss us. There were lines about childhood memories, about wishing things could be like before, and a vague offer to meet for coffee. I sat with it for a moment, then folded it back into the envelope. No tears, no hate, just clarity, because the us she missed never really existed. It was always me making space, me showing up, me holding the door open while they criticized my shoes as I did it. Now, I don't hold doors for people who lock me out. I build my own, with no room for folding chairs, only seats that honor the journey. And when people ask what changed, I tell them. They tried to write me off. So I rewrote the story and removed their names. It happened at a grocery store of all places. I had just finished speaking at a local university about women in law when I stopped for oat milk and blueberries. And there, near the self-checkout, holding a bag of instant ramen and looking like a windblown ghost, stood my mother, hair thinner, eyes unsure, dressed in clothes that didn't scream Golden Girls Mom anymore. She spotted me instantly, paused, hesitated, then gave a little wave like we were old friends who'd lost touch. Alyssa, she said like my name still belonged to her. I said nothing at first, just looked at her, because I remembered, not just the wedding, not just the gift table, but the years of silence when I paid the mortgage and kept the lights on while they told everyone how the younger ones got the real talent. She stepped closer. I heard about your speech, and the firm, and all the success. I nodded. Yeah, it's been a journey. She looked down at her groceries, then up again, a smile flickering in her voice. Your father's not doing well. The business is, well, it's gone. She didn't cry. Not quite. But her eyes held something new. Need. I told your sister she should reach out. That maybe it's time we all sat down and talked. I tilted my head, studied her. Not with hate. Not even with resentment. Just perspective. The last time I sat at your table, you said nothing while a man laughed in my face. Alyssa. And when I built my own table, none of you showed up. She flinched. Just slightly. People make mistakes. People own mistakes. You watched me carry the family on my back and still questioned if I belonged. There was a pause then. A long one. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a photo. Me, age 9. Holding a certificate. Beaming. You always had it in you, she said softly. For the first time, her voice cracked. We didn't know how to support someone like you. I stared at the photo. That little girl had begged for approval in every report card, every competition, every dinner she paid for with adult silence. I handed the photo back. She grew up, and she's okay now. Does that mean there's no chance? She whispered. It means, I said gently, that healing is not the same as reunion. I've healed. You're welcome to do the same.
Separately.
I walked out of that store without looking back, because this time there was nothing left to carry. Later that night, I stood on the rooftop of my office building, wind in my hair, the city glittering below. My assistant, Tasha, brought out a tray of champagne. The staff had gathered. We were celebrating 10,000 pro bono hours logged. Lives changed. Contracts rewritten. Stories reclaimed. As we toasted, I looked at these women, all once told they were too much or not enough, and felt something I hadn't felt in years.
Peace.
Not silence. Not vindication. But real, quiet peace. The kind that doesn't need applause. Because I knew I didn't need my family's love to validate my worth. I needed their absence to discover it. A few weeks later, an email hit my inbox with a subject line: Invitation to honor our community leaders, City Hall. At first, I assumed it was spam, but then I opened it. My name was listed, top of the list, along with a request to speak on behalf of women entrepreneurs in underserved communities. The mayor would be there. So would the city council, media, donors. My foundation had made waves far beyond what I imagined. I accepted, not for the cameras, not for revenge, but for the girls in the back of the room who still whispered their ideas like secrets. The day of the event, I wore a deep navy suit, not flashy, not loud.
Just mine.
As I stepped onto the stage, a hush fell across the auditorium. I was raised to think success meant silence. I began. Don't be too loud. Don't ask for too much. Don't sit where you're not invited. I paused. But here's the truth. Sometimes you're not meant to be invited. You're meant to own the table. The crowd clapped, not the polite kind. The kind that feels like thunder in your chest. And somewhere behind the cameras and velvet ropes, I spotted them. My sister, my mother, even my father, in the back row, silent, unannounced, watching. I kept speaking, not for them, but in spite of them. Afterward, a reporter approached me. You're trending, she said. Your stories become more than viral. It's transformational. Funny, I smiled. It started with a folding chair and a $7,200 reminder. She laughed. And where do you go from here? I build tables with no head. Just seats, for anyone who's been told they didn't belong. That night, I got one final message. A letter delivered by courier. Inside a check. $7,200. And a sticky note. We're sorry. We finally understand. Mom and Dad. No words. No calls. Just money. Almost poetic, in its way. Because money was how they measured value. And now, they were paying me back in the only language they understood. I didn't deposit it. Didn't return it. I framed it. Hung it in my conference room under one line. This is the cost of silence, and the price of finally being heard. And still, I didn't hate them. That was the real twist. I didn't need to hate them. Because hatred keeps you tied to the very people who never bothered to untie you. Instead, I let go. Not out of kindness, but out of freedom. On the 1-year anniversary of Monroe Law Group, we hosted a gala. Women from shelters came in gowns we bought. Clients turned employees brought their kids. A jazz trio played in the courtyard. And in a corner, a young woman sat alone, quietly sipping punch. I approached her. First event. She nodded. Nervous smile. I'm not sure I belong here. I grinned. Neither was I once. I handed her a seat card. It read, Head of Table. She blinked. Me? You're already rewriting your story, I said. Might as well sit where it begins. Because that's what they never understood. They thought they were raising a servant. They raised a storm. The final twist came not in a courtroom, not at a gala, but in a quiet room filled with books. A local high school invited me to speak during Career Week. I expected polite claps, bored faces, maybe a few questions at the end. What I didn't expect was the girl in the back row. She raised her hand, soft voice trembling. What do you do when your own family doesn't believe in you? The room froze. Every student turned. She didn't look away, she looked at me. And my heart cracked open all over again. Because she wasn't asking for advice. She was asking if I'd survived. I walked to her. No mic. No podium. You remind me of someone I used to know, I said. She worked twice as hard to be seen half as much. Paid every bill with silence. Sat at every table knowing it was never hers. Then one day, she stopped asking for space and started building her own. The room went quiet. And then, applause. Not thunderous. Not dramatic. But real. Honest. Afterward, that same girl handed me a drawing. Me, standing at a table, surrounded by women. The words on the table read, "We built this together." I held it like scripture. And I knew this was the real end of a story. Not the petty contracts. Not the broken apologies. Not the wedding, or the sticky note, or the $7,200 check. The real ending was this. I had become the woman I needed when I was 13. Weeks later, a package arrived at my office. No return label. Inside, a velvet box. A delicate, high-end folding chair. Miniature. Bronze. Mounted on a plaque. Engraved with, "The last time they seated you there." No note. No name. But I knew. My sister had seen the interview I did with Vogue Business. She heard me say, "My family sat me by the gift table once. I'm not angry anymore. I just don't eat with people who made me starve." I placed the miniature chair on my office shelf, next to the framed $7,200 check. Artifacts, not anchors. Proof of how far I'd come, not who I'd been. The house I once dreamed of sharing with family, now a group home for young women aging out of foster care. Fully funded by Monroe Foundation. Each girl gets her own key. Each room is painted in soft blues and golds. There's no gift table. No hierarchy. Just love. The kind that includes, not the kind that demands. And me, I don't need a chair anymore. I stand now. I lead. And when someone asks me what my title is, I don't say CEO or founder or attorney. I say, I'm the one they tried to seat in silence, who turned every room into a revolution. Because in the end, they gave me a chair. I built a kingdom.